Oh, actually,
That was
there goes. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for taking the time, as we already discussed. And I think before we kick it off, I think a few of us don't know each other yet, so I think I would like to start with a brief round of introduction. Maybe I just start because I'm already talking. So I'm Dominik. Yeah, part of the blockchain industry for, I don't know, a few years. Have been very active in Cardano over for a few years. Discovered SingularityNET last summer and have like a few funded proposals in both ecosystems, and started to build TrustLevel last year. It's I call it project, but it might become a company or a startup that's about building reputation protocols. So yeah, all my funded projects in both ecosystems are more or less around reputation. So that's my, let's say somehow my passion, or one of my passions. So yeah, that's about me. Maybe I hand over to Pete.
Thanks. Peter Elfrink from Netherlands, working for SingularityNET Foundation, closing in on 3 years now. Started off as a community member, but at some point they figured I was working anyway, so they offered a job, mostly on the marketing side of things. Shifting by personal preference, I have to add, mostly to community work. One of the projects there is the ambassador program. Yeah, the relevance there to reputation is recognition of community member contributions. That's a short version.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks to having you on board again. Nicholas, how about you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my name is Nicholas. Recently, I became the governance lead at the Cardano Foundation, but whatever that means, yeah, that's it's just a title. But what I'm really doing is really trying to push education when it comes to governance within the Cardano Foundation and in the community, right? Because we're going through this whole process, maybe some of you know, right, of becoming a decentralized, truly democratic, that can be discussed, community, right? So, and I'm with the foundation now for 1 year and 10 months. Before I was a community manager, and also really working a lot with meetup organizers in the ambassador program of the Cardano Foundation. So yeah, currently really focused on governance and still events like the Cardano Summit. Yeah, this is what I'm doing currently at the foundation. And also in my spare time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This applies to everybody here. Spare time, like there is none.
What is that?
Not.
Yeah, cool to have you on board as well, Rafa.
Sure. Rafael Preza here. I am currently based in São Paulo, Brazil, and I am the operations manager for the DeepFunding program from SingularityNET, which is a grant program, pretty much decentralized from our perspective and from what we see now. And one of my main goals under my role, it's exactly to make this decentralization work along, right? It's something that's very new and it's challenging. So I hope to also have your support and for us all to go forward with this decentralization through governance, operations, and so on. Before this role, I worked for about 4 years in the IOTA Foundation, a German blockchain foundation, in the capacity of business developer. So now I am about 10 months, about 1 year working in DeepFunding. Very happy for the people that I was able to meet here. Very nice people in this ecosystem. Everybody pretty much willing to make this process of decentralization and DAOs and etc. to work properly. And yeah, that's what I am also aiming for the other areas, not only for the Web3 landscape, right? I truly believe this new concept of decentralization, it can be applied in many, many industries and therefore to the world. And let's not forget as well, artificial intelligence, it's a big part of it, decentralizing it. Yep, thank you.
Amazing, thanks. Victor, you want to go next?
Yes, of course, thank you. So yeah, my name is Victor, greetings for everyone. I'm a Polkadot ambassador since 2 years. It's a voluntary, 100% voluntary thing. So I'm not work for Polkadot, I'm not work for Parity Technologies or Web3 Foundation, it's just for my pleasure. In the meantime, I organized nearly 20-ish Polkadot meetup in my hometown, Budapest, Hungary, and organizing currently a blockchain week and here a Polkadot day, where I will speak about Polkadot's technology. I'm very much involved in Polkadot technology from several aspects. I actively involved in the open governance mechanism of Polkadot network. It's very nice, but very complex to understand. If this meeting is for to educate you about how Polkadot's governance works, I can do that very much. It's my favorite topic. This is why Felix invited me to this call. And currently I'm involved in several projects, which is deeply in the framework, in the frame of Polkadot network and all the substrate-based blockchains. And I'm open to every possibilities. This is why I'm here. So in very short, this is me. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. We are very curious to hear all the stuff later. Yeah, Joanna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanna. I've met a lot of you, but for those who I haven't met before, I'm Palestinian Jordanian. I've been in the space for a while, but what really captured me about the space is decentralized governance. And one thing led to the other. I got really involved with a lot of cool projects and initiatives, one of which is we've been supporting DeepFunding as part of FOTREC for helping them build their reputation tool for how they calculate their voting weight. So for a proof of concept, we were able to build an automated calculation for a score that represents their contribution on a portal, on a proposal portal. And now for the MVP, we're integrating the voting data into that voting weight. And through this, hopefully we'll learn what the next steps for such a tool would be. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for getting up early. And I assume Tom is the last one.
Can't hear you, mate.
We can see that you unmute and mute, but can't hear you. Okay, maybe we start with the like what we are going to do today, and then we give Tom the mic again. You wanna share slides, Felix? Okay. So what we want to do today is we already said to exchange ideas, concepts, and experience in regards to governance and reputation. So this, and to give you a little bit of context, this workshop is part of a series that is part of a successful proposal of DeepFunding round 3. So Felix and I facilitated a few workshops. We
Oh, we lost you, Dominik, or at least I cannot hear you.
Same to me. Give it a second. It's
Yeah,
Friday.
he's
It's
frozen.
perfect Friday mood.
Yeah.
I hope you have something to drink. I myself got a coffee. It's awesome to have a coffee and a call and a cigarette. And that's fucking awesome. Victor?
Yeah, was it just me?
Yes, I think you froze for a second.
Okay, yeah, my Zoom closed and opened again, so I don't know what happened there.
Awesome. Then back to action. Sharing the slides again. And don't worry, guys, we don't have a lot of slides with a bunch of stuff. The biggest part of the thing is really workshop, so we go into discussions later.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Where did you lose me?
When you said it was the initiative is a funded proposal from the last DeepFunding round,
yeah.
actually.
Okay.
Shout out to DeepFunding for this, actually. Thanks. That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we called it future of reputation in decentralized innovation funds, even though it goes a bit beyond that. And yeah, the first workshop we were really focused on the future of DeepFunding itself. The second one is, as I said in the beginning, we were talking together with different initiatives inside of the SingularityNET ecosystem. And yeah, today we wanted to bring together like people from outside SingularityNET, and yeah, to see what's left and right, and getting to know different approaches and different initiatives and different brains and minds. So yeah, that's why we are here, and we have basically 3 guiding questions for today, around which we wanna have a good discussion with you guys. And so we wanna start by allowing everyone or every representative of each ecosystem to talk a bit about like how governance works for Cardano, Polkadot, SingularityNET, and also how you deal with the topic of reputation. Like, does reputation play a role? How do you make decisions? So yeah, that's how we want to start, to just get to know each other better. And the second part will be a reflection, I would say. So we want to hear some stories, what worked well, maybe also some stories where governance failed, for example. And then the third part, and I'm very excited about that part, we want to brainstorm a little bit together, like how can we support each other? How can we maybe end this workshop and yeah, have an idea where we're gonna meet next and what we want to talk about next, or where we can support each other. So that's the third part of today's workshop. So we have planned 90 minutes. It's already we've already spent almost half an hour for introduction and getting to know each other. So yeah, I would say without further ado, let's kick it off. Felix, you wanna add something?
No, nothing to add. And we understand that governance is nothing what you easily describe in 3-4 minutes, right? So it's already quite a challenge for you guys already to tackle the first question. So ideally, we try to stay a little bit on high level and figure out already, okay, where do we see some patterns? Where do we see large differences or commonalities in this regard? And really speak also in this regard very from your own individual experience as well, right? So you don't have to reflect the whole ecosystem or whatnot really as as a person as well to these topics. And on this one, then let's go step by step, maybe then. So the first question is really status quo. So how is it right now in regard to governance? How does it actually work? What does governance mean to you in this regard? Maybe first one, Nico, is on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay, what is the current state of governance in Cardano right now? We don't have currently decentralized governance. Currently, we have 3 entities that hold 7 so-called governance genesis keys, however you want to call it. And there's a majority of a quorum of 5 needed out of those 7 keys to initiate a change, right? This is one entity of the current governance system. And then on the other hand, you have the stake pool operators, the validators, who, of course, have, I would even say, the real power in the system, because they are the ones running the system, right? They're the ones who produce blocks, who keep the protocol running. So they have the real power. But the problem is for them to really be, let's say, make decisions, they need to coordinate, they need to come together. And it's the same in every ecosystem. So this is how it currently works. We have this one Genesis key holders, which are the Cardano Foundation with 2, Emorgo with 2, and IOG with 3. So this is the structure, and the stake pool operators. And decision currently, I think how it happens, if we talk from a process level, these 3 entities have communication channels, really traditionally like business channels, and that's how they coordinate changes. And changes don't happen often, right? For example, when do they need to coordinate for hard fork initiations, for parameter changes, which also don't happen often currently, and for example for the catalyst treasury withdrawals. That's where they currently coordinate. So this is the current governance system on Cardano, and yeah, I think a lot of you already understand what's the problem here. The 3 entities really can make decisions that could impact the entire Cardano ecosystem. And yeah, this is why we change it now.
Awesome. Thanks a lot to this, Nick, already. I think this is interesting because you mentioned already a really interesting pattern, right? The governance actually identified through 3 main topics: hard forks, protocol updates, or fund movements. Right? This is actually where governance, let's say, comes into action actually on the blockchain. Then Pete would be next on the screen. How about you, man?
Yeah, I guess I'll make a distinction between SingularityNET Foundation governance, DeepFunding governance, which Rafael can talk more about, and maybe also within the ambassador program. So on a foundation level, we don't have our own blockchain, so there's no parameters on the network kind of stuff. There's topics like hard fork. Hopefully we won't have that anytime soon, but we had one. Basically, I would say the trigger for this is also coming from, yeah, it's a bit centralized. It's the foundation noticing there's a need for something and then calling out a vote. It's been very basic so far. Just 1 token, 1 vote, very straightforward. Yeah, and some other topics would be like allocation of specific funds, or the establishing of a supervisory council, for example, also had these type of votes. But yeah, it's very basic, I would say, and it's not even properly on chain. So there's a world of improvement there. And then, yeah, within the ambassador program, we try to be as decentralized as possible, I would almost say. There's yeah, decision making usually is relatively straightforward, and it just flows into a direction. So most of the time we've succeeded with either consensus or consent checks. We have had some voting, but only very experimental. And yep, that's it. Maybe to complete, Rafael, you could do the DeepFunding one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
I
would be
guess
awesome.
would be the flow, right? Exactly. Well, deep funding is about experimentation, right? Sometimes, especially in the governance side with decentralization and etc., we sense that we are kind of a sandbox for the SingularityNET Foundation in the perspective of initiatives. We have tried many things, consensus, and so on for the governance part. Initially, between grant rounds, we used to have these governance rounds. So community members gather in Zoom calls twice, twice a month. And we use it to discuss the points, what went right, what went correctly in the previous round. And then members would put some topics that they would like to see. From there, we had a vote on the topics, getting that information, we would put in the next round of the grants. And from that, we discovered that sometimes it was still very centralized because of lack of capacity from the deep funding itself. Because, for instance, at the beginning, before I joined, it was only Jan, right, the head of the deep funding. And things sometimes they are difficult to communicate and get feedback and so on. So from this process, we started with the following what the SingularityNET Foundation was doing in the sense of creating this council or board for governance. And then we went with our own, because of some bureaucracies and etc., we decided to go with our own council, which was the focus group. The focus group itself, it's not about taking the decisions, but it's about communicating better with the community and hearing better from the community to the community, right? So we have weekly calls, for instance, and Mattermost channels where we discuss topics, and then from there we can create and create more structured topics where we can go to the community, or the focus group can go to the community and hear from them what it should be done or not. For instance, because we tried polls in our governance calls before. So online polls, yeah, let's do a poll here and see what you guys are thinking. But then it wasn't perfect. It generated a lot of confusion as well. Getting back to the focus group, now they have these listening sessions where they are able to listen the community around that specific topic. And again, experimentation. For instance, we had this decision to be made. What we did, we discussed it internally with the focus group and say, hey, this is what we are willing to do. Anyone here from the community, you are going to have 2 weeks to say, I disagree because of this, this, and this. And then we would take this again and say to the community, okay, is this make sense? But always in a very experimental way, professional, but experimental, in the sense of try new things and check if it would be, especially when it involves finances, right? In this case, we were about to pay some contributors in the community and so on. So we wanted to have this more specific understanding of what the community think. And from the beginning, about the rounds, who votes to elect or select the projects that are going to be funded? The community, right? It's not about us. What we do is to deliver the structure, the website and the system that you can comment and assess the proposals and etc. But in the end, who is going to decide is the community. One challenge that we have now is to have a big community, an engaged community that can bring a better decision into all of this, because it's still small, for instance, for voting in the grants and so on. we don't feel that we have the size and diversity enough to select the best projects and proposals. So it's all connected, and we are going to go into this reputation thing because it's also very important in this sense of decentralized governance. That's where we are willing to do. We don't want to take the decisions by ourselves. We want to have the community deciding. And yeah, that's it.
Nice. Thanks, that Raphael. Then, and I take a bunch of notes also in the background. So there's a bunch of good stuff already shared here. And Victor, the next. Current state on Polkadot governance. Where are you at over there right now, guys?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. So firstly, I would like to ask, should I use screen sharing later, or should I just tell you in 5 minutes how this thing works on Polkadot, or what should I do?
You do whatever you think is the best to do.
Yeah. So this is the time where I jump all of the stuff.
Yeah, you do whatever you want to do. Yes, introducing like Polkadot governance to the folks here.
It's
Okay.
decentralized.
How many
You
minutes?
can go.
How many minutes each person has? So I
Oh.
can.
Well, you can start giving an overview for a couple of minutes, and then we can do a second round where we maybe go into best practices and stuff, so so we can keep it interactive a little bit. But yeah, feel free to start sharing. Yeah.
No, I think I will introduce in 5 minutes, and then go to the other people, and then if we have time, I will introduce deeply with screen sharing. It's fine. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so first of all, Polkadot is not just one blockchain. It's nearly 100 and 150 blockchain built on substrate blockchain builder framework. So if I say Polkadot, I mean the whole ecosystem, because to Polkadot relay chain, there is a lot of slot and a lot of parachain. Well, parachains are the layer one blockchains built on substrate framework, and these parachains, these blockchains can be connected to the Polkadot relay chain. So imagine one main chain, and the side chains are the parachains, and they are interconnected with Polkadot, and Polkadot secures them, so on and so on. And Polkadot manages all the transactions. Not manages Polkadot finalizing all the transactions, but happening on the side chains, the parachains. And this architecture lets the dual system interoperable, because Polkadot relay chain knows every state of the parachains, and because it knows, the parachains can transact with each other. And regarding the governance mechanism, it's
Victor?
used.
Yeah, your sound is breaking a little bit up. From my side, I have a little bit hard time to understand you well.
Okay, because should I speak like this? Is better?
It makes a
Metallic
weird
sound,
effect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like a cracking sound a little bit. Yeah.
I will switch to my telephone.
Giving you a second. This is already really nice also to compare. I love actually, for example, also in between, for example, SNet and Polkadot, where SNet says, we are not even our own blockchain. And then Polkadot, yeah, we are a bunch of different blockchains. And then you have like Cardano nicely in the middle to say, yeah, we are.
Yeah, you got all cheers, right? Not a
Definitely.
blockchain, multiple blockchains, and in the middle a blockchain.
And I think it's that just by listening to you guys, this is something so interesting already in this regard to say, okay, ecosystem can apply to many different contexts in this regard, right? And while they all have the same challenges on, okay, how to make, let's say, ideally in this regard, on-chain decision-making protocols or whatnot in this regard happen, relates to a bunch of different spaces, like Dominik mentioned before as well. I think, right, where ideally this can be applied to many different industries, right? Oh no, Raphael, you mentioned it. To say, yes. Decentralization, right? So if ecosystem, one chain or a shitload of chains all face the same issue.
Okay, I'm back. Is it better?
Not really, but
Not very much. Yeah, the thing is,
Maybe it's your earbuds. I don't know.
I believe so.
Yeah, maybe it's the earbuds.
Yeah, the story is my family closed from my home, unfortunately, and I'm currently in a call. So yeah, it's
Which way?
Yeah. Should I do anything else? You hear
I believe it's possible
okay?
to understand. Just go on. Just go on. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Just go on. Okay. So what I just wanted to say, yeah, the governance mechanism of Polkadot, it's used to upgrade the whole blockchain network for treasury management and change some parameters into the blockchain. And in addition, to make cross-chain message channels, which is kind of like a bridge, but it's a trusted bridge between Polkadot and the parachains. So basically, every decision about the whole ecosystem manageable through the governance mechanism, and each parachain has its own unique governance mechanism. So imagine like if similar like so the Polkadot ecosystem is similar like the European Union, where independent states can unite, and because they are trusted on the European Union, the citizens can transit between the countries, because all of the laws and all of the countries are interconnected under the umbrella of European Union. And it's a little bit similar to Polkadot because the parachains are trust on Polkadot, and every transaction, including the government's related transactions, can flow across the whole blockchain network. Yeah. There is no single authority, but it's controlling Polkadot. So of course there is a company called Parity Technologies, who are the developers of the main source code of Polkadot, and there is a non-profit organization behind it, which is Web3 Foundation, and but they are not ruling and they are not controlling Polkadot, because Parity stepped back in the last month, and in the future maybe it will also kind of disappear. And people who want to write the code of Polkadot can join to a collective, which is called the Polkadot Fellowship. And this fellowship basically registered on the Polkadot blockchain, and they have the right to upload new source code to the relay chain, and everybody can join to this fellowship, to this collective. Nearly 60, 70 people there currently, but in the future there will be thousands of people. This is the law. And in the meantime, the government on the referendums, not just the fellowship can vote. Everybody who holds DOT token can vote on referendums. So it's basically a meritocracy, and it's a combo of meritocracy and liquid democracy, because everybody can join to the Polkadot Fellowship, and if the person has some good knowledge about how to code Polkadot code, and in the meantime, it's a liquid democracy, because people who have dots can delegate these dots to other persons, like me, or if I have dots, of course I have dots, I can delegate to any other people who have dots through the open governance mechanism. So every transaction is booked on chain. So it's fully transparent. Everybody can see everything, and not shielded with ZK or any other stuff. Yeah. So in very short, this is how Polkadot open governance works. But of course, there is a lot of game theory and cryptography and other stuff built into this system. So it's very agile. Yes. But to understand well, we need to jump much more. But if we have time, we can jump back later. I would like to just start with a 5 minutes comprehensive story about it. Yeah.
So thanks, that Victor. And the sound was good enough to get it anyway. So thanks for this, Matt. Then Tom or Joanna. Tom, are you back with sound?
I hope so.
Yeah, there you are, man. Cool, awesome.
Hey,
Can hear you.
how you doing?
Hi, Tom.
Hey. So I'm Tom. I'm also a Polkadot ambassador. I'm kind of in this call mostly because I have a kind of more academic interest in reputation systems. So from like the game theory, mathematical side of things. So Vic is kind of more the real expert on technically how Polkadot governance works. But I'll just add a couple of things which I think are important for understanding kind of where it can go from here. So the one thing, as Vic mentioned, is that the runtime upgrades, so the actual upgrades of the blockchain or the blockchains, because they're parachains, they also go through governance. And that's so there's a whole process. There's not just the on-chain governance. There's a deliberative process. There's loads of like off-chain coordination work that people do to put it through. And also something that I think is important from the way the system works mathematically is that you have different authorities. So there's token-based voting, but there's also the collectives, which includes the fellowships, which are kind of like a council. So they have authority because they're chosen for skills and involvement and so forth. So for example, if there's a big problem, if there turned out to be like a massive bug, then they could act more quickly than the pure token-based referenda. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, but it's a part of my interest in reputation systems is that they can never be stable. Like mathematically, they can never be stable. They have to keep moving. And so like because Polkadot's governance is hugely complex at the moment. I mean, it's quite difficult for outsiders to understand. It's quite difficult even for insiders to understand. And there's a lot of off-chain coordination, and the more complex it gets, the more complex it needs to get, if you know what I mean, which is obviously a turn-off, but I think this is necessary for any governance system, whether it's whether it's real world of business, government, or a blockchain. So yeah, that's it. I think it's certainly the most advanced in terms of game theory and complexity, and I think that it and all governance systems are just going to get more complex as time goes on.
So much agree with that statement. That's for sure. Thanks a lot, Tom. Really good insights on this. Especially when you said the reputation systems, they can't stay the same, right? They are not static. Like they have to change. Like yes, definitely.
Maybe Tom, you can answer Nicolas' question in the chat. So he asked who makes the final, or maybe even Vic. So we can just continue the discussion here, because I think it's a very interesting.
Question. So the question is the balance further regarding the who finally the fellowship or the token holders make the decisions. My answer is both, but mostly the token holders. But the complex thing is the fellowship can shortening the referendums in time, and because there are curves, there are two types of curves for every specific referendum, every proposal, and these curves are basically calculated from a formula, and these formulas are each formula have a different characteristics, and yeah, so this is the question. What political governance can be complex. So I can show it if I share my screen. Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and yeah, it's right. There are usually not the easy answers in the governance discussions. But
exactly.
You explained it very well, and also Tom in the chat. I think I have a better understanding. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think this also made challenge. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Tom.
An interesting analogy is, what's happening in the US at the moment, because there's this 300-year-old system of checks and balances, and it's always been stable. But then someone can come and tip it over and say, well, this is possible within the system. So what happens if I do this? What happens? You've got these repositories like the electors or whatever. You've got these, or the separation of powers. You've got these repositories of power which are held by officers. But what happens if we mess with that? What happens if we say, okay, well, I'm going to send in my own officers to do it or whatever? So it's kind of, and I think that's obviously pretty dangerous for the country, but I think it's also necessary in any governance system to have the ability to kind of tip it over like that. This is kind of in answer to the question, like, could the dot holders replace the fellowship? So yeah, I mean, there's always that danger lurking around the corner, and I think that's just something that we have to get our heads around. We can't design it out. We could design it out, but then you'd have other negative consequences.
That's agree. And also on this, and also coming back to Vic, when you mentioned to deep dive, like it's a massive challenge to generally go quickly over governance, right? I mean, the conversation here is one we could have for weeks and months. And like each governance is very complicated, right? You can also deep dive on Cardano and constitutional committee and the CIP processes and the SPRs and everything there. Ideally, in today's call, we try to protect ourselves a little bit from going too deep into rabbit holes and really just catch a high level already a little bit. Okay, major differences or commonalities in this regard. And we left one out for the first question, and actually, Joanna, very interesting perspective on this one for sure. Like status quo right now from your perspective on governance.
I'll just touch on something I think that wasn't really mentioned because a lot of the stuff were like on-chain mechanisms, but it's also very important for governance, like how do we come to decisions off-chain and what methods can we use to make sure that, you know, the decisions are made in the most decentralized manner. A really good concept that we've been dabbling with is this concept of sociocracy that builds upon consent-based mechanism rather than consensus. So not like majority wins, but mostly, and this is like, because obviously in a governance, there's tiers to how decisions are made. So in terms of Cardano, for example, there's a constitutional committee that's more one person, one vote, but then there's DREPs that's more maybe one token, one vote, or quadratic voting, or however way that goes. But on that level, when it's one person, one vote, or it's more people oriented, how do we create a system where like it's more consent based, and how does that process look like? So this is something that I think is very important as like a main foundation. But then also within DeepFunding and the work we're doing there, and how some improvements could be made, because not right now it's quadratic voting, but it's really just the square root of the token holding. But an improvement could be something like preferential voting, where you can have like it's quadratic voting, but as well you add preferences to the different proposals that you want to vote for. And so there's different mechanisms, but I wouldn't go really deep into that. But I think these are just, other than everything that was mentioned, because I think it's a combination of everything. These are the two points that I think are also very important to know.
I have a quick question, Felix and Dominik. Should I also explain about the future governance system on Cardano, maybe?
I was actually about to ask you to touch on that before we go to the next question, because you kind of shared the status quo, but yeah, stop with a cliffhanger. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. My laptop just died, but yeah, I'm back and I'm done. Thank you.
Happy that you're back.
Thanks,
and I was just mentioning that maybe I should also explain where we are with the current governance discussion in Cardano, right? Because we are in a very centralized state and we don't want to be there anymore. So currently we're undergoing through this whole process of really becoming something that maybe Polkadot is or other ecosystems are, where we come to a system that is more democratic with like one ADA, one vote, right? If that's a fair system or not, that is, I'm not touching that right now, but that's the whole discussion. And the plan is that not these three entities that I mentioned before have the control, but really the community, right? And we will not just have these, we call them delegated representatives. In the end, that's just the people who vote. So anybody can register themselves as a voter, as a DREP, and then vote on these governance decisions. And governance decisions are protocol parameter changes, treasury withdrawals, hard fork initiations, but also something like a info governance action. That means like a poll. You can just start a poll. And then we have other two important bodies, the Constitutional Committee, which is basically a body that checks if a referenda, if a governance action, if a proposal that comes from the community, right? So anybody, any ADA holder can initiate a proposal. They can just propose something, a change, whatever. And this Constitutional Committee, they have to check if this proposal aligns with the Cardano Constitution. The Cardano Constitution doesn't exist yet. So in theory, that's what they would do. They only check, hey, is this proposal aligning with the Cardano Constitution? And if it does, then they just approve it, right? If not, they disapprove it, and yeah, it doesn't go through. And then, as I mentioned, right, we have the stake pool operators. They have very indirect control, I would say, right? But in this new governance system of Cardano, they will also be able to directly vote on specific proposals. Yeah. So we really, basically the switch is from a currently very centralized governance system to a more decentralized governance system with a liquid democracy kind of system, plutocratic, if you really want to say it, right? It's the truth. I mean, that's where we start. And a strong emphasis is also on this is a minimal viable governance system where it's not the it's not the end all be all. It's really the first step, right? Where we start, and then we want to continue and make it more inclusive, fairer, more open, and not just based on a pure one coin, one vote system. And when I say we, I don't mean myself as Cardano Foundation employee. I mean myself as the Cardano community. And I don't speak for the Cardano community, but as a Cardano community member. Yeah. Vic, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to reflect this one vote per token thing. So this is kind of to talk that if we could say that. Polkadot also use this mechanism, and there was a debate. We should implement some way where one person have one vote. Of course, that would be the best in some ways, or not the best, but would be efficient. But in the other hand, we cannot guarantee this this one person have one vote because we haven't got technology for that. We haven't guaranteed each person has only one Polkadot wallet or Cardano wallet or Cosmos or Ethereum wallet. There's no technology to do that. So we have some quadratic voting, which is a nice vision. It's impossible with this technology stack we have in Web3 in general, on Polkadot, on Cardano, or in the whole industry. So we have this plutocracy, one vote per token thing on Polkadot too. So of course we have several whales on Polkadot who have much more say in the system than me, because I have not many much. But of course, in some way, it's similar like stock market. Then, if I hold 1 million Microsoft stock, I have a say in the Microsoft company, just for example, because I'm deeply involved. I'm very much deeply involved in Microsoft in this case, because I have a lot of financial things in the system. So similarly on Polkadot, we imagine like the same. If we have a lot of dots, I have a bigger say, but I have a big responsibility, and we have with this very much, very lot of amount of token, we have much more. Yeah. So in conclusion, quadratic voting it's would be nice, but currently we cannot do that. So we have this plutocracy here. Yeah. But in some ways it's nice to have, and it's logical because of this token allocation scenarios. Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Rafa, you have your answer.
Yeah, quadratic voting is also something that we have in our grant selection, the voting itself. So you have a snapshot at the end of the voting period, and then we calculate the weight of each vote.
So you have quadratic voting.
In the voting for the projects or proposals that are going to be selected, yes, we do have. Still, it's not perfect, of course, especially because I see as a snapshot. So you can go there and put a lot of AGIX in your wallet for that specific moment. So sometimes we even don't want to share the time of the snapshot to avoid such a situation where one can go, oh, it's going to be 2 p.m. UTC of the 3rd. So I'm going there and going to put a lot of AGIX. But it's something that we have at this point, because the issue, of course, with the one token, one vote is we have whales, right? That can change the course of what we want. Something that we already thought about it, and it's kind of difficult, even technically speaking, is to have, for instance, the time span that you have those tokens in your wallet. So this is also something. So if the person has a long time the tokens in their wallets, they are more connected to the program itself. So it should have a better weight. So doing this balance, it's something that I guess all of us are willing to do. But then I guess it was you, Victor, I don't recall now. It was mentioned about, yeah, for people from outside, it's difficult to understand. Even for people inside, it's difficult to understand all the system for the governance. And now we are in another dimension. We are not about people that are only involved with our blockchain or ecosystem, right? So they can dive. We are expecting to have people around the world and with many backgrounds and so on. So this is something that I truly believe it's going to be the most difficult challenge, which is education for those that are from outside and inside as well. Because it's not as we mentioned, it's an innovation, it's something new, so it's not something that people has in their blood, right? How to operate in an environment with these complex governance systems, and how much, if we make it too complex, how much are we avoiding people to jump in? We are creating friction for them to jump in. So this is very, very tricky. I tend sometimes to go with the simple solution exactly because of this. For instance, something that I am also experimenting is having some sort of tiered approach on decision. So if it's a critical decision, we might have the most complex situation to receive vote from the community, right? For instance, should we give 1 million or 5 million to the next round of grants? This is something that it rely very much on the lap of the community. But if, for instance, as happened that it was my first try in this, I asked the marketing circle, which is a strategy that we have that also goes in the direction of governance, these circles, which is circles of the legacy departments in a business. We have it from the community. So the community are handling our marketing, review of grants and votes and etc. The focus group itself can be considered also one of the circles in this structure. So I asked them for, hey, we have the idea of doing this Idea Fest, which was brought by Felix for DeepFunding, which is amazing. But then, considering we are doing ourselves, we were talking about changing the name of the event itself for the proposers to present their ideas to be voted. So I said, you know what? Let's not pick the name. Let's go to our social media and ask the community which of these the 5 options we created here that we think it's okay. Let's ask them. And this is going to be the one that we are going with, because it's not critical, right? It's something that it's nice to have, and also to make the community feel part of the decisions. Oh, I voted for it and now it's there, it's going well, and so on. So this type of tier into this complexity, I think it's also very important. So for less critical things, less complex. For more critical things, more complex, I would say, which is tricky by itself, but which is challenging by itself. But I guess it's something that we can navigate.
Amazing.
And if you,
yeah,
please,
yeah.
please don't.
Finish the sentence. Sorry.
No, I was going to another topic, but please, yeah, go on.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw the time, so I guess I'm actually happy that we don't have invited more ecosystems. Otherwise, we would be still in the first question. I would like to do another round with like the following question. Thomas already brought up the term reputation. So what interests me is, what does high reputation mean to you, and also like what leads to high reputation, and what tools do you use to measure that? Like maybe we can touch on that a little bit, because I think that's a very, very important topic when it comes to governance. Maybe I don't know who wants to go first. Maybe even Tom, because you mentioned it already.
Okay, cool. That's good, because I was going to. There's something I kind of wanted to raise. So, okay, maybe I'll just talk about the reputation part. So, what does high reputation mean? I think that the thing that I'll keep coming back to in any discussion about governance, but particularly about reputation systems, is that the system can never be stable, because if it can be stable, it can be gamed. So, I mean, there are a lot of things. I think one key thing that like we see in real world, society governance, and something which I get the feeling that like they're trying to replicate a little bit in Polkadot, is that you have lots of different sources of authority or reputation. And what it does to have lots of different sources means that if one of them tends towards being gamed, then the other ones can sort of like come to the fore more. So, for example, if you the obvious thing is if you have token-based voting and it's one token, one vote, then you have whales and VCs. We see this already on Polkadot, and they can organize off chain as well, and they can coordinate. And so, it's quite easy to game that. If you have sufficient tokens, quite easy to game that in order to dominate and, take the governance in favor of your interests. So that's why you have, like, for example, the fellowship. And the fellowship is, to a large degree, based on reputation. It's not an automated system, but it's kind of like semi-automated. So you have people who are just socially recognized as being people who have Polkadot's interests at heart, who are recognized as being technically competent. Also, I think there's like quite an over-representation of parity there, just because the assumption has been that parity people are technically competent because the company built the blockchain. But yeah, I think the key thing really is that you have criteria which are sensible, but that those criteria do change over time, because as soon as they stop changing, then you create a magnet for people who have an incentive to game the system. So whatever we said is the best way to get reputation. Okay, you've got you've got a PhD in computer science, or you made this many contributions, then you could just say, okay, well, what we need to do is hire someone who fulfills that criteria, and they can be our puppet. Or if you have something that says, like, listen, how long have you been around this blockchain, or how many followers do you have? Then again, they're things which can be gamed and essentially bought in. So yeah, I think the key thing is to make sure it never reaches a stable equilibrium, and if it does reach if it gets close to a stable equilibrium, to have means to overturn that stability and keep it fresh.
Who's gonna make the decision? Like, what's the important criteria, or
Well,
like what's the relevant?
That's exactly the reason why you need alternative sources of power. So, for example, token-based voting or fellowship.
Yeah, it's I completely agree that as soon as you stop changing the system, it's gonna be easy to game it, because people can easily adapt. Nicholas, I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And right, when I think about reputation and all of that, it is not really something that is being directly considered when we talk about the future governance system of Cardano. But in the end, right, everyone has their own beliefs about who is competent, who is not competent, who has high reputation, and who doesn't, right? So in the end, it influences everything. And just one thing that Tom said, I think a real danger in the governance system of Cardano in the future is that we might have people that are part of every single of these three groups that I explained previously, right? In theory, you could have one person or one entity that is a stake pool operator, that is a constitutional committee member, and that's also a delegated representative. And then we ultimately could reach this balance that Tom mentioned, right? That is not desirable. So what will be really necessary is if you come up with a reputation system for Cardano, for example, is to not just design it based on knowledge or on any one metric, right? A reputation system cannot work if it's just one metric, but it should be a lot of different ones. That's what I'm just thinking. Yeah.
I think this fits quite well really to also like Polkadot and Cardano are actually quite similar to each other, right? Because also both actually, this is interesting, both have the same proof of stake as a consensus algorithm, which is Ouroboros in this regard, which is in itself already, which creates the environment already for natural reputation, right? Because the stake pool operators in their regard, they have to somehow do something for the delegations, right? And they are the ones then validating the blocks for all this regard. It's not directly called a reputation system, though it is one. On a very technical side, though what is interesting, usually in both ecosystems, SPOs don't have to be hardcore developers, right? To run a pool, very often it's not that, let's say, hardcore-ish. And you can see a lot of content creators or whatnot, for example, running their stake pools as well, right? So there's a quite diverse setup on this. Like, what's really interesting in this is we never look on it as, let's say, it's already some sort of reputation, because I think when we speak about reputation, it's nothing else than a formula, a set of algorithms which we add to something. The something usually is a contribution system. In this regard, for example, operating a stake pool, right? In this regard, it's a contribution directly to the network, and there's an incentivization in this process. The reputation itself is, let's say, a little bit social credit of developers, right? I think what's very interesting in this regard is as well that both, and this is something where I can see all the different ecosystems working heavily on this challenge. Something Raphael mentioned before, the lack of a large and strong enough community to actually run the whole governance, right? Because each ecosystem has the challenges. You have the founding entities, they started the whole stuff. Then you move into decentralization, but in order to move into decentralization, the community has to build up to actually develop the capacity to take over, right? And this is interesting how differently this is manifested in Polkadot, for example, with the fellowship program, which is actually quite amazing. I read the manifesto. It's a pretty neat contribution system, hardcore developer focused, but very interesting. And I think I said quite some things which sparked you, because I see Nicholas and Raphael sent out, but just wanted to drop this to the recording. Just some observations by listening to you guys. This is pure gold. Please keep talking. Okay. Nico first, and then Raphael.
Thank you, Felix, for that. And you're absolutely right. And one thing that I just thought, what is the risk of a reputation system is that we create a hierarchy, right? That new entrants really have a challenge of ranking up to where these incumbents are currently. Because I can see that in the current discussion on governance, right? We have these OGs that are very well. First of all, maybe they hold a lot of ADA. They're around for a long time. They have a lot of merit already, or whatever you want to call it. And it's so hard for people that come in that might be really, maybe they're 10 times smarter. Like, let's just put it on intelligence now, right? They are the experts. They know everything, but nobody takes them serious because they are not highly ranked yet in the reputation system. Yeah, just one thing that came to my mind. Sorry.
Absolutely, yes. And I heard Nicholas saying twice or three times about, yeah, we are decentralized-ish or something like that, right? And I was, okay, so from our perspective, we have the same problem, let's say, but with opposite um, basis of the problem, which is you have a huge community. But what I think that you have also is a very structured and hierarchical structure. So that's why you are sometimes say, oh yeah, we ish on your decentralization because you have it. On our side, we have pretty flexible structure. As I mentioned, it's circles, experimentation, and we hear a lot. We do these sessions to listen, to vote, and etc. But what we don't have is the strong, yes, but not the big community. And then we have also kind of a decentralization-ish in this sense. So we have a problem with centralization, but going with different source of the problem. So this is an interesting perspective as well, probably because of the ages of Cardano, Catalyst, and SNet and DeepFunding. But it's something interesting to assess and analyze from this perspective as well.
One thing that I ask myself all the time, like, is it actually desirable if, for example, I have a high reputation in Cardano. However, that's going to be measured, and would it be desirable or even valuable if I can kind of bring that reputation into Polkadot, for example, like, or like it's, yeah. I feel like if every, maybe it's necessary that every system has its own, like, ecosystem has its own reputation system, but maybe it's just yeah, kind of cement that silo, because at one point it doesn't make sense for me to change the ecosystem because I've invested so much time into one system, and even though I feel like, oh, another one would be beneficial for me, or I could be beneficial for the other system, but it's just too hard to get to the same level of reputation, for example. I see a lot of hands up, so I think Pete was the first.
Yeah, in my mind, that's kind of the end game, right? To have some kind of modular system where you would, well, for example, just on a practical level in Catalyst, if somebody has reputation within Catalyst, there's a decent chance they would also be a good member for DeepFunding community. It's both innovation funds that transfers pretty well. But I would somehow expect a system where the moment you are looking for someone's reputation, you get to tick a couple of boxes what you're interested in, and then get a custom reputation score for whatever your query is. It's a bit tricky though. Like if it's hardware based, for example, yeah, can you even translate that to anything social based? You're able to run a system. So at least on the proof of identity, it could be playing some kind of role. But yeah, in my mind, it should be a modular system.
Maybe Tom, you want to go next?
Because sure. Thank you. Forgive my technical incompetence. Yeah, just the small things like so you mentioned like what are the benefits of like kind of like cross-chain modular reputation, and I think for me because I keep saying like you don't want the system to be stable, you want different sources of authority. I think the word for it would be that it's like an exogenous source of reputation, so it's not within this one system, which perhaps you could find a way to game everything in the whole Polkadot's governance system. But then if you had reputation from Cardano, for example, then it'd be quite difficult to apply the same games or the same strategy to game it in one chain as on the other. So I think it's definitely beneficial as just as a form of just as a form of social reputation to have reputation that comes from somewhere else as well.
Yeah, what I was thinking is that, right, we have different kinds of reputation because on one hand, let's think about the validators that we have on the different L1s, right? We have on Polkadot, on Cardano, on all the others, and their capability of just running the system, right? Maybe you can draw the conclusion that somebody who is able to run a stake pool on Cardano now for more than 3 years is also probably able to run a validate on other chains, right? But are they also able to participate in the same social off-chain discussions and in the whole governance process? I think that's a whole different discussion, right? So I think maybe from a technical standpoint, it makes the most sense to start something like a reputation system. Yeah, just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, on this topic, we talk a lot in the Web3 blockchain landscape about interoperability between blockchains, right? But something that is equally importantly, it's interoperability among foundations or programs or grants itself. In this sense, the reputation system, it's very important to have. For instance, we have here 3 blockchains, foundation, etc. The low-hanging fruit that I can see, and it's very important for us in DeepFunding, is the proof of life. So if someone comes from the Polkadot ecosystem with this reputation, it's already good enough for us to see, so this person already did something there, and the person is joining us now, but it's something that exists indeed. So if they start to comment, especially in the ChatGPT LLM situations where we have a lot of comments and votings, because we use it to reward commenters, for instance, in proposals. But then we had ChatGPT and started to they started to blast our comments and so on, not adding value. And we started to ask ourselves, okay, is this a real person or is it a person that has multiple accounts and so on? So with this in mind, if we have this specific thing, would be already a good start for us, right? A proof of life because it's coming from Polkadot, from Cardano ecosystem. So yeah, it's nice. And then we can have much more things. For instance, we can, and again, going that complexity or simplest part, we can have, for instance, okay, it's coming from another ecosystem, the reputation. So I'm going to give a 40% weight to their reputation, existent reputation, and 60 it's going to be from DeepFunding SingularityNET reputation points. And then we can play with this type of stuff as well, giving the enough importance to it. So yeah, this interoperability between programs and foundations, I really believe it's the way to go.
Thanks, Dr. Raphael, and much agree on this. Also, Nico mentioned it before in the live chat as well. Like reputation ideally needs to be linked in governance in this regard, and sooner or later to the IDs as well. And when I think about the IDs, like I don't want to have a DID for SingularityNet and one for Polkadot and one for Cardano. Like the fuck comes like within the 21st century. Anyway, so I definitely agree on this. And there are challenges, that's for sure. Looking on the time, we are pretty much close to the end of this meeting. And
we have just started.
Yes, and it was sure we wouldn't get through all the points. It was so sure, not with such a topic and with such people in the call. That's for sure.
I have the whole day for you guys. Okay.
Oh, cool. Okay, Rafa, get yourself a coffee. We stick around. No. You are busy, and you are busy for a very good reason. And it's Friday, and you all should go into a well-deserved weekend, and hopefully you have one. And quickly going on the next topic, because ideally we said, oh, okay, first of all, we really hope that this time actually really is a benefit and value to everybody by listening a little bit. Okay, what is happening to ours? Actually, the only thing what we offer to you is locking some time for other ecosystems, right? Something if we don't do it for you, you don't have to do the time to do it yourself. So we are a little bit like community secretaries here, throwing you a quick calendar invite on the thing. If you say this was beneficial, like what we would love to offer is maybe a follow-up call in a month from now. We can say, okay, maybe just thinking a little bit about, hey, what was this call? Whatnot. We sent out an email with a documentary as well, also which will later include the the workshops which has been held before. So to keep you a little bit in the loop, also how this whole thing plays out. And would this be something interesting for you to say 1 month from now? I'd love to invite everybody once again. We can go a little bit deeper, and ideally the agenda would be defined by everybody here. So I would send out an invite with a document where we can collectively draft an agenda. Also,
Amazing. And I feel like, Vic, we should schedule a call, just an hour, for you to share all these insights, because I feel like there's so much we can learn from what's happening inside of Polkadot, because yeah, there's so much focus on governance as well. So I feel like yeah, we should. I personally want to hear more of that. So hopefully we can fit that into another session. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Felix, Dominik. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Great session, guys. Great session.
Good
Thank
session,
you very
guys.
much.
thanks a lot for your time, everybody. And like I said, you're busy for good reason. Take some time to calm down. Weekends are there for a reason. Like, take them. They won't come if you don't take them. To do yourself some
Beer
good.
as well.
Exactly. We just started in the new year, and it was a busy year for all the ecosystems, for everybody here. And we have a long run to go. And the things we are working on, these are topics which are worked on by human societies in thousands of years, right? It's a 1,000-year-old conversation in which we participate here. And we have lots of important stuff to do. So be careful and kind of yourself. Make sure to not burn out. You are at higher risk to do so, every one of you, and we need you for the long run. So governance is important, but only if it's for the people. So if you are not the first priority, then non-governance makes sense. That said, take care of yourself, stay awesome, and thanks that what you do for all the different ecosystems.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Have a
Thank you,
nice
Bye-bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah, happy weekend.
Bye-bye.